If you think wars begin with explosions, you're watching the wrong screen. They begin with a stamp, with a license, with a custom seizure, quiet, bureaucratic, and terrifyingly effective. Because in December 2025, a Chinese court case made something very clear. China's enforcement around strategic minerals is getting sharper, including a case where customs seized more than 96 tons of smuggled antimony. And antimony isn't a headline metal. It's a war metal. It's in batteries, chips, flame retardants, defense supply chains. So when people ask US military panic, the real answer is darker. The military doesn't panic in public. It recalculates in private. And tonight, I'm going to walk you through what this actually looks like, step by step, so you understand why this moment feels like an alarm, even though you didn't hear a siren. Picture the opening scene, not a battlefield, a port, a warehouse, a line of containers under harsh white light. A scanner beeps. A customs officer pauses just long enough to signal that something is wrong. And then seized. No missiles, no speeches, just inventory that doesn't leave the country. That antimony case, 166 tons involved, 96 plus tons seized matters for one reason. It tells the world that export controls aren't just policy, they're muscle. And once enforcement becomes muscle, the game changes. Because now companies aren't just buying metal, they're buying permission. Now zoom out. Strategic metals are not like oil. In the old movies, big tankers, dramatic embargoes, one clear choke point. Strategic metals are worse. They're small. They hide inside everything. They're the difference between a missile that hits and a missile that misses. The difference between a drone that flies and a drone that drops out of the sky. The difference between a radar that sees and a radar that blinks at the worst possible moment. And here's a twist that most people miss. The weapon isn't the metal itself. The weapon is the timing. Because modern manufacturing doesn't need you to block 100% of supply. You only need to block it at the wrong moment. Delay a shipment, reject a license, increase inspection, administrative processing. 1 week becomes 2, 2 becomes 6. And the factory doesn't scream on camera. It just quietly starts missing deadlines. Then the customer starts rewriting contracts. Then the buyer starts paying rush premiums. Then the government starts asking questions no company wants to answer out loud. Do we have enough? Not for a year. Not for a decade. For this quarter. So what's China actually doing? People imagine a dramatic seizure like a movie. The state marching in, grabbing barrels of metal. But real power in 2025 looks like this. Licensing regimes, restricted lists, general licenses, issued and revoked. Reuters reported that China has begun issuing a new type of general license to streamline rare earth exports. Faster approvals, smoother flows, controlled release. Reuters, that sounds calming. Until you understand what a general license really is. It's not freedom, it's a valve. And whoever controls the valve controls the pressure. Because if you can speed exports up, you can also slow them down again quietly without announcing a ban. We 4,000. And if you want to squeeze a specific sector, you don't say, we're squeezing you. You simply redefine what qualifies. Or you add scrutiny. Or you require another document. Or you delay defense-linked end users. Reuters reporting around China's export controls has repeatedly shown how licensing is where the leverage lives, especially as controls expand and compliance requirements tighten. And when the world finally notices, it's already late because supply chains don't move at the speed of outrage. They move at the speed of boats, and boats don't care about your opinion. Now let's talk about the word that makes people nervous. Military. Why does the military care about metals like antimony, gallium, germanium, rare earths? Because modern defense is not steel and gasoline. It's electronics, sensors, communications, power management, precision. That's why critical minerals policy has stopped being a nerd topic and started becoming national strategy. And you can literally see the countermoves forming. Financial Times reported US support behind a $7.4 billion critical minerals processing project tied to Korea. Zinc explicitly framed as reducing reliance on China for key industrial materials, including antimony, gallium, and germanium. That's not a normal business expansion vibe. That's a national security supply chain build. That's a country looking at a choke point and saying, we are not doing this again. Not after chips, not after medical supply chains, not after discovering that globalization can turn into a trap overnight. So is the U.S. Military panicking? Here's the honest version. The military doesn't panic. It war games. It runs scenarios like Scenario A. Exports continue, but approvals slow unpredictably. Scenario B. Exports continue, but certain end users get blocked. Scenario C. Exports resume on paper, but enforcement gets aggressive at ports. Scenario D. Supply becomes available, but only through intermediaries at extreme premiums. And here's why that antimony case matters again. Because it shows enforcement isn't theoretical, it's operational. And when enforcement becomes operational, the military has to plan as if the next restriction could be selective, sudden, and quiet. That's the scariest kind. Not the ban you can headline, the delay you can't prove. Now, let me give you the real thriller layer. This isn't just China versus US. It's everyone versus everyone. Because the same metals the military wants are also wanted by EV supply chains, grid storage, solar manufacturing, semiconductors, AI infrastructure, aerospace. Meaning the competition is not only geopolitical, it's industrial. Even when governments don't fight, industries do. And when industries fight, they don't fight with speeches. They fight with contracts, with long-term offtakes, with stockpiles, with prepayment, with alliances, with preferred customer lanes. That's why the general license story is not just a trade detail. It's a signal that the rare earth export machine is being managed like a strategic system, not a free market. So what happens next? Here's the sequence I'd watch, because it's how these stories usually unfold. Licenses normalize.com returns, companies exhale. Enforcement tightens, smuggling, crackdowns, seizures, prosecutions. Selective frictions appear, some firms get approvals, others wait. Allies build parallel capacity, new processing, new supply chains, new capital flows. Financial Times, the world quietly stockpiles because nobody wants to be the last buyer paying the highest premium. And while all of that happens, the public argues about headlines. Meanwhile, the real players argue about delivery. Let me end with a line that frames this entire video. You don't have a strategic metals crisis when prices spike. You have a strategic metals crisis when availability becomes conditional. When the metal exists, but you can't get it. Unless you have the right papers, the right relationships, the right end-use story, the right timing, that's when market starts turning into allocation. And allocation is not economics. Allocation is power. So if you felt that chill when you read the title Begins, here's what it really is. Not a war announcement, not a missile launch, just the world waking up to a new reality. In the 21st century, the gatekeepers of critical materials don't need to fire a shot. They just need to control the exits. And the scariest part? They can do it while everyone's still debating whether anything happened at all.